Hi, everyone. My name is Jeannie Zames, and I am the Senior Director of Growth Marketing at Alchemer. I am very delighted to bring together two great thought leaders from AppFollow and Alchemer Mobile to discuss mobile app reputation, why it matters, and what you can do to fix it. But we're also going to look at this through a much bigger lens of overall brand reputation as well. Thank you for joining us for what is sure to be a very fun and engaging webinar. All right, first I'd like to introduce you to my two guests today. Jonny Davies, he is Director of Customer Experience at AppFollow, and Robi Ganguly, who is founder and GM at Alchemer Mobile. Thank you so much for being on the webinar today. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. Jonny, I'm going to start with you. AppFollow helps customers monitor their app performance, cultivate better customer experiences, and accelerate app growth. So you can certainly understand the importance of mobile app reputation. Can you give us a definition of the situation around mobile app reputation as you see it? And why is mobile app reputation so important, especially right now?
Yeah, great question. And thanks for having me here on the webinar. So yeah, I think first and foremost, I'd like to draw an analogy. So how your app appears in the App Store is similar to, and the reviews thereafter is very similar to if you're taking a walk down the high street and wondering which restaurant to eat in. There's lots of choice, of course, but let's imagine that restaurant has next to its menu in the window a list of live reviews of people that have been in that restaurant before you, right? What's the food quality like? What's the price like? What's the service like? That's going to hugely influence whether you enter that restaurant or not. And it's exactly the same in the mobile stores. So when we're talking about mobile app reputation, the first meeting of that really is on that review page. When you're deciding what to do about whether you get stuck into that app or not. Now, of course, the old adage of you want good reviews, that's a much more kind of complicated thing to achieve. You need to be responding to your reviews, of course, in a timely fashion, and you want to be hitting this sort of kind of 4-star rating or above, because this greatly increases our chance of our apps being downloaded. So I think, excuse the analogy, but it's really about, in the first instance, ensuring that you have a good reviews management strategy. But really, this is just aesthetics, right? How your customer journey moves through your mobile app, the content that you put around it, the effort that you put into responding, to replies. These all hold reputational value, I would say. And so, yeah, it's definitely a holistic approach. But of course, more adages here: transparency, authenticity, consistency in your approach, whether you're a brand or down at the app level. These things are key, and I would argue that they're more key now than ever. And just to finish, I think you asked a kind of second question there about why is it important now, and I would say, not that long ago, we had an imposed lockdown, right? We were all being asked to stay at home. What do you do when you're at home when you can't do anything else? For a lot of grown-ups, we were sat on our phones. That's where we saw solace, a bit of escapism. And that's where we were actually spending quite a bit of money too. So the mobile app landscape, had a huge boost back, I guess, what was that, 2020, 2021. Lots of user acquisition happening, lots of spending happening. Now, what's happened since then, and I'm going to use some inverted commas now, but we have been kind of returning to normal. Last year was the post-pandemic year of people getting used to coming back out again. This year, that's accelerated. If you just look at some of the kind of travel and tourism figures, it's crazy. So what we're seeing now is this battle between, I guess, the attention spent on the mobile experience and on the mobile app experience, and this real world pull of like real life entertainment, which is happening. So that and the rising cost of digital advertising and driving customers to your app in the first place, I would say that it's more important than ever to be focusing on mobile reputation, how you're handling feedback and reviews, and focusing a lot on user retention and the overall customer experience.
That's great. I can tell you, certainly during the pandemic, and as a very long-term marketer, brand is always very near and dear to my heart. And prior to the pandemic, there were brands that had mobile apps that I didn't really think about a lot. And my interaction with those during the pandemic absolutely changed my perception of those brands. So you hit it right on the head. I think that's a great point. All right, for our next topic, Robi, I'm going to turn to you. Jonny talked a little bit about public aspects of mobile app reputation. Can you broaden that perspective a little and talk more about that mobile app reputation and how that plays into your overall brand reputation?
Yeah, for sure. I think mobile app reputation, it's important, right? Like it's this public facing set of things that people pay attention to make decisions. Like Jonny was saying, it increases the likelihood of being downloaded. If you're a 4.5 star or 4.9 star app, you have a much higher rate of the people who end up on that page taking an action, converting and downloading. So it's this public thing that also leads to results that's really important, but it's not the only measure of how customers feel about the brand. It is a public measure, and it's a public measure of how they feel about the brand and the mobile app. But that's just, what I find to be really a truism is that that's the tip of the iceberg. That's a small portion of this. So the visual here that we use on a regular basis to talk about this is like when you look publicly, whether it's in social, whether it's in the app stores, those pieces of commentary are really a small portion of what's going on overall to understand the reputation of a brand. There's a lot more opportunity to talk to customers privately. Being like really thoughtful about app store reputation and then overall brand reputation means you necessarily get into the things that are the outputs, the public sharing of the comments, but you also have to get in the practice of the inputs. How do you talk to customers privately? How do you get proactive and ask them questions about what they think about your brand, what they think about your mobile app, what they think about the connected experience? What we're talking about with mobile apps is it's not often just a digital experience itself. It's actually a digital experience that's connected to a physical experience. The classic case here is Starbucks, right? We've for years had this physical experience of you go into the store and do they treat you well? Do they get you your drink right? Is it on time? Is it hot? And then they connect it to a digital experience that allows you to pay with it, right? It allows you to get rewards with it, and it allows you to order ahead. But you still have this physical experience. And so melding those things, the companies are doing that, but the practices internally to understand, how people feel about that means that you have to go much deeper than what's going on publicly. And I also put into place, ideally, systems that allow you to understand, hey, when that customer showed up and the barista was a little bit late, it impacted your customer experience with this customer in particular in this way. So, the beauty of really thinking about this holistically is that when you think about reputation, it really has to touch all of the pieces of your brand and how you deliver your service. And when you get from monitoring the public reviews to actually going beneath that surface to really focusing on getting proactive and soliciting feedback about moments in time, then you start to paint a picture of why do people feel the way that they do? Why are they saying the things that they do? And when you build a company that has a system around understanding all the pieces of the picture, that's where we get into really brand reputation as it bubbles up from like the mobile app store reputation. And so, of course, it's important to start and care about those things people are saying publicly, but it's not the only place. And that's where I would expand.
Yeah. That's great. And I love the Starbucks, example. And you and I have chatted about this long before we ever met. I use the Starbucks app regularly, and they changed some things on their app, and it absolutely changed my perception of the brand. And they were able to correct those actually using our product. And, it's such a cool story because long before I knew you or knew these products, that was what was going on. I'm going to stay with you, Robi. How do companies start on this journey to really better their brand reputation? Do they start with those public-facing but lagging indicators like ratings and reviews in the App Store?
Yeah, I think that the easiest on-ramp for a lot of companies as they move into mobile in the first place, as they release an app, is that they put it out into the world and then they start to tackle, like every product team I've ever met has a roadmap a mile long, right? So they started to tackle the things that they think were after launch. But the beauty of the App Store is you've launched it, and then you monitor that App Store feedback. You hopefully get some people who are downloading it, And then some of those people are starting to talk in the App Store. So by monitoring it, that first step that the customers that we've worked with have taken is we got it out, and now we're starting to see some feedback, and we're going to iterate. That's going to inform us. And just that process of going from launch to now we have to iterate, that mindset shift for the team of, well, now we've actually let this encounter people in the real world, and here's what they're saying. That iteration process is that first step. And I think it's a great entry point into building sort of the muscles, right? Like I think of companies maturing in this way as trying to like really build up the muscles and the behaviors that are necessary to measure and understand brand reputation across every piece of the experience. This one's a very obvious one, right? Because it's collected and centralized. So we see people starting there. And really, the first step is moving from you've got an app to like monitoring it actively. And this is a big place where Jonny, I think, and the AppFollow team is taking people to this really valuable spot in the journey that allows them to monitor and iterate and be active and have like basically fundamentally a set of best practices. And then they probably take the next step and they start to respond. Both the app stores allow you to respond to people. So if you're in this place where you've moved to responding, now what you're doing is you're realizing that you can close the loop with customers. You can tell them, hey, we heard your problem and here's what we're doing about it. We heard your problem. We're not going to do anything about it. But once you get into that place where you're not just monitoring, you're responding, it then moves pretty naturally from what we've seen to a place where others inside the company are caring about what customers are saying, and they start to get a little bit more proactive, right? And so that movement into getting more of the team focused on how do we really care about the customer problem? How do we get proactive is when they start to institute tools like Alchemer offers, the ability to actually listen to customers proactively, to send surveys to them after they've taken a certain action, maybe within the app after they made an order, asking them about the ease of use. And using that feedback, again, to iterate, right? And iterating around customer problems and pain points and iterating around the things your most valuable customers need, and then closing that loop with those customers. So you've gone from a place where people are just saying things and then you're monitoring it, to a place where people are saying things and you're responding in the public stores, to a place where inside the company, the processes are shifting so that you can get more proactive in front of them. And then you're really moving forward to a place where you're closing the loop with customers before they even said anything publicly, right? So that's what I want to really get to, is a company getting to customer needs and pain points before anybody has to say anything publicly. Ideally, you're so good at this, the only people who tend to talk publicly are the ones who are just talking about how excellent you are, because privately what you're doing is you're proactively reaching out, you're starting conversations with customers, and that journey, it can take years. What we've seen from companies is this maturation process isn't a matter of months, it's years, because you have to change processes, you have to change systems, you have to change behaviors, the iteration cycle. And so this is what maturity really looks like, is moving all the way to the place where you're proactively listening to customers and you're closing the loop with them before they ever have to go somewhere public to tell you about the problems.
That's great. And that closing the loop is such a critical piece. And all of us are consumers of one sort or another. And when someone has closed the loop with you, and ideally proactively before you've even had to say something, that is just such a enlightening experience with that brand. All right, next I'm going to turn to you, Jonny. Can you tell us about how AppFollow thinks about mobile app maturity? I think you actually have a mobile maturity model. I think you have a maturity model to share with us.
We do, yeah, absolutely. I'd be delighted to talk it through. But it really relates very closely to what Robi was talking through there. It's about building this muscle and treating app reputation management as a discipline, as something that you train and get better at, right? Like any reputational thing, it's multi-dimensional, right? It works in lots of different ways. It can take time, as Robi said. This isn't a kind of one and done overnight scenario. And a lot of it, as you get further up the maturity curve, so we will have a look at the model in a minute, it's actually much more reliant on the culture of the business, the mindset of the business, and how it thinks about its users, how it uses data, and how it kind of humanizes insights. There is a danger, I feel, of getting swamped in data. Like we're not short of it, right? But I think the brands that do best are the ones that are able to see through that and actually kind of flip the script a little and say, well, actually, it's insights that we need, and it's action that we need, and it's the feedback loop, kind of that we need. But so perhaps we could take a quick look at the model, and I'll kind of
absolutely.
It's certainly not rocket science. It does touch on what Robi said, but I think specifically, it kind of talks us through these kind of key steps, and talks about the sort of metrics and benchmarks that you'd expect to see, as you're going from this kind of beta first launch phase through to to something more maturing.
Perfect.
Did you?
I think you're going to share your screen, so you just need to share screen.
Fine, I can do that. I thought you
excellent.
were going to, but I will go ahead and do that. Give us 1 second, and I will.
Perfect.
I'll just flip this right here, right now. So yes, here it is. This is a redacted version because it's got a lot of words in it, and I wanted it to be slide friendly. But effectively the kind of colored sections you can see, this is where we're looking at how many reviews you've got coming in. People are starting to download, as Robi said. You are starting to get some reviews in. You want to be hitting 100% of those replies. A, because you don't have many, and B, like it's just a good thing to do. Plus you're learning all the time. But it's a manual approach. You're not necessarily using a tool here. You could be doing this natively within the app stores themselves. So you're not automating any of your reply coverage. I'm going to touch upon why it's important to automate and the sort of value that brings. ASO strategies, getting there, and you've kind of taken the training course that is the fundamental course with us, just to try and get our heads around things. But you're basically reacting when needed, and you're starting to consider to step up your efforts. Now, if things are going well, you do want to increase your efforts. And as you can see here, your numbers of reviews are growing. We have something called the App Reputation Index, which I'm not going to go into now, but that starts growing with you. Your reply strategy is still 100%, but you're starting to implement some automation. Okay, so there are reviews that are very safe to automate to, like, geez, your app's fantastic, star. And just a little note, and Robi, you and I spoke about this, but the context is everything. And when you're reviewing an app, it's a bit like NPS. It's a certain type of review that you get. Some of these either had their outcomes met, and their needs met, and they're delighted, and they want to tell the world. That's of course what we want. But guess what? The opposite is true too. If their needs haven't been met, if we've had a glitch, if money's been lost, if they've just had a poor experience, maybe the user flow has just annoyed them. They had 5 minutes and they couldn't get it to work in 5 minutes. They're going to let you know too. So it's often quite a emotionally charged response. So therefore, you still want to be responding 100%. You want to be automating the things that you know are good. 5-star reviews, report a concern, like removing any bad stuff, like foul language or irrelevant stuff. And then it gives you the time and space to be focusing on these reviews that could potentially cause you damage, right? Where these people are in this kind of negative emotional state. So around kind of 25% automated here. But starting to get more of a systematic approach, but you're beginning to create this culture of insight, right? Beyond just reviews. So as Robi said, this is never just about kind of reviews data, and it's an important first stream, but you want to start to be kind of cultivating this data more broadly. And then I'm not going to talk through the whole thing. Our kind of viewers can read what it says in kind of proactive and strategic. But we always want to be aiming for this nirvana of continuous improvement, where we have shared metrics across teams, and that you're incorporating feedback into everything you do. And I've actually shown the inverted pyramid that I was talking about. This is not my image, by the way. There's a chap called Stan Stananathan who I know from he was VP of Insight over at Unilever, but I just loved his talk on this particular topic. And really, it's where we want to be focusing on action and impact, and kind of humanizing insights, not not just kind of monitoring and responding. But we'll include this full model as a follow-up to this webinar. So thanks.
That's great. I love this model. I mean, it's one, we've looked at it as we've been rehearsing, and it's one, as a marketer, I definitely want to dig in and probably follow up with some questions for you. All right, next, and I think this is kind of the favorite part that I have about this webinar, I'm going to have both of you talk about some customers who you've helped to improve their mobile app reputations and overall brand reputations. Jonny, why don't you start first? I think you've got one. Is it Cacao Games? And if I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, this is a great story, and I think the power of AppFollow and the customer stories that we love is where there is this sort of intersection, this Venn diagram between customers finding efficiency gains in workflow. I've just given an example there where you're starting to automate so that your team can spend time on more important and more valuable activities, but where this change, this initiative actually leads to reputational increase. And I think that was the case with Cacao Games. They were looking to cool down this engine of all of these reviews in this hugely popular game, Guardian Tales. So they did that, right? They harnessed automation. They used, I think, integrated into Zendesk so that their users weren't having, and their teams weren't having to use, multiple tools. It's in this, familiar environment. So that meant that they could get to reviews and segment their reviews and tag their reviews and get there much, much quicker. So kind of closing that time to reply loop right down. They had fantastic alerts coming in. So rating changes, spikes in reviews, report concern, featured reviews. So they were able to be alerted to things that were particularly important. But as I say, the really nice thing here is that they had something called a reply effect. Something we like to talk about a lot at AppFollow, which is the very process of having fast, meaningful replies, either automated, right, because we're safe to do so, or carefully crafted by the team because they had time. I think around 60% almost of first-time reviewers went back and changed their review. It's an amazing human, like we're all humans at the end of the day. And if you say hello to someone and they say hello back, hey, how are you? Then it creates this emotional connection. And what Cacao Games saw, I should say, is like a 1.5 point star improvement. I think it was over a year, but that's huge. As we were talking about 4-star, they managed to drive that up, and I think their average total rating went up in the stores by about 0.5 point too. So just that's my story for you today. Like achieving efficiency, but through that, achieving reputational gains too.
That's awesome. And games are so competitive. And I know as a parent of a once teenager, you're always looking at ratings and reviews. And is this something my kid should download? Or is this something worth me doing while I'm on the train on the way to work? Great story. All right, Robi, I'm going to turn to you. And this is another story I love almost as much as Starbucks. Can you tell us about Zillow?
Yeah, totally. And before I get into the Zillow story, I just want to say that what Jonny's talking about with the reply effect is it's such an elegant way of talking about this truly human behavior, which is, if you take the time to say something publicly and then somebody else takes the time to respond to you, ideally the company, but even if you're on Reddit and somebody responds to you, it pulls you in, right? It just pulls you in. And so it's a beautiful thing in the public scenarios for feedback to have that presence. And that alone, when companies take that step and they say, oh, we're going to actually invest in doing that, it's such a massive shift. I can remember, because I've been in this business for 13 years now, like talking to games companies and they'd say, no, we would never want to respond. That's just too much work. But now we see, hey, it's a best practice. And if you're not doing it, you're going to fall behind. So it's really, I want to underscore that level of investment. We can talk about it a little bit casually, but we know that companies building the practice around it and the philosophy around it, that's a really important step, right, in that journey. And our customer Zillow came to us, many, many years ago, thinking about similar problems. How are we going to get rated well? And in fact, we're Zillow. We have this thing called a Zestimate. We actually score and estimate the value of homes. So we have like a tremendous amount of things that we're doing that are reputation oriented already, but our app store reputation maybe is not so great. And so we started to work with Zillow and we talked to them about how to manage that app store reputation and get some other more large fans that talk about them, evangelize. And sure enough, that work was really great. But then what we did is we expanded with them. Again, we're talking about is this whole concept of like, brand reputation is across the entire business, and what's in the App Store is tip of the iceberg. Well, what we started to find was that there are really meaningful opportunities for Zillow to understand the experience of somebody shopping for a home. You know, there are many pieces of that shopping for a home. So people would actually go to open houses that were arranged by Zillow. Well, because they're using the app, because that digital signpost of the app is in their hands as they go to the showing, they found out they could use us, right, Alchemer Mobile, to solicit feedback from people who are going to the showings, maybe even while they're in the showings, to understand how that impacted their experience with Zillow. Was this making them more reliant upon it? Because in many ways, Zillow wants to provide lots of information value before they offer transaction value, that actual purchase of a home or the renting. And if they can give you information value and they can check in with you, well, that's really important. So they used us to measure that. And that was just a piece of the experience that really weren't able to measure before, because they might send out an email to you a week or two after you'd gone to a showing, but it was just really old information. It wasn't stuff that you recalled. But by putting it in that moment, they're able to flesh out this understanding. And they said, all right, well, now we have a better picture of what's going on when our customers leave their house and they go to an open house and how they feel. What else should we be thinking about? And then, at the executive level, they said, well, we have this NPS dashboard and we measure NPS, but our tools for measuring NPS are actually really quite limited to our email experience. So we will send you an NPS measurement after you take certain actions, or potentially on the web, but we're not doing that as actively as we could. And then we have all these people in the mobile app who we're not asking NPS questions of. And so we have a whole segment of our population that is probably our most engaged, most valuable population using our apps, but we're not measuring NPS there. So they turned on, again, with Alchemer Mobile, the opportunity to measure NPS, and they lit up all this data. And they brought it into the executive dashboards. And all of a sudden they said, oh, well, now we see our NPS in mobile is different from our NPS on the web, which is different from our NPS in email. And we have a much more robust picture of what does our brand really look like? Not just how do we feel based upon the measurement tools we have, but what do our customers say across all of these journeys? And really, when you think about what that did at Zillow, is it meant that they had on a regular basis the right information, right? Because they're measuring across all of the channels their customers, and they have a lot more of it. In fact, in mobile, what we saw was a large increase in the amount of volume of feedback they were getting to the NPS surveys. And that really rounds out a better understanding of brand. And that's what we're here talking about, is how do you really understand what your brand reputation looks like? And I think what we found with Zillow is they went from reactive to proactive, and they went from one or two channels to all of the channels. And as a result, their measurement of brand reputation is much more sophisticated and kind of like where I would encourage people to go.
That's great. Probably my favorite definition of brand as I've been in marketing is the promise you make to your customer. And when you really think about that, it's every human interaction they have, every digital interaction, every interaction as they walk into a store or a facility. And this is such a great holistic way to think about your overall brand, and your app is such a critical part of that. I think this has been such a great discussion. It looks like we're at the end of our time. I do want to make sure we do have a couple of questions. I want to make sure everyone knows if you have a question, please submit those in the Bright Talk portal. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Here's a good question. We have a great mobile app reputation, 4.5 stars. That is very good. How can we leverage our mobile app reputation and customers to improve our overall brand reputation? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Why don't you start with that one, Jonny?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, firstly, congratulations. 4.5 stars ain't bad. From an App Store perspective, having that sort of rating is doing a lot of the leveraging for you. If you're an app-only business, then hurrah, your app's your brand, and away you go. But irrespective, it's an important asset that you've got and that you've worked hard to achieve, hopefully. So the focus on that specifically is about protecting that asset by practicing, as I've mentioned, great reviews management, right? Because things change and you've got to change too. But if we want to be leveraging that to help overall brand reputation, which is part of what this talk is about, of course, what that gives you for every star, for every user review, that's a pool of kind of reference points, right? And it depends what type of brand or app you're running. But, at the base level, you can promote the positive reviews, right? They are public. They are about you and your products and services. So use them. kind of put them in your marketing literature, put them on your website, put them, kind of anywhere where you're kind of promoting what you do. User-generated content is hot, right? That is, well, it's hot. It's not that hot. It's been around for a while now, but it's really important to show that authentic voice of the user, of the human, not the corporate voice of the creator. So obviously, again, this gives you a whole pool of kind of user-generated content to kind of dig into. Collaborate with influencers, I guess, if indeed, if you're a fashion app, something that kind of lends itself to that, then get in touch, and have these promotions happening organically, shall we say, kind of elsewhere on social channels, etc. And yeah, I guess the final point is like customer stories. Like we tell customer stories when we've told them on this webinar. We tell them every week at AppFollow. It really, really helps to humanize your brand, to show that you're listening, that you care, and it helps, of course, foster that really important sense of community around your app as well, which is kind of crucial.
I think you're absolutely right. It was like the 2 customer stories you guys shared; those were like the exclamation point on what we did. Do you have anything you want to add on that one, Robi?
Yeah, I think that the common path that people take when they think about how do we evangelize this great rating or review is, let's put it in our materials, let's put it in our ads, which is cool. You have an ad that says, hey, we're a 4.5-star app. But a more sophisticated set of advertising and targeting capabilities that people have is you can look through your positive reviews, you can look through your positive feedback, and you can find themes that people attract to, right? So again, let's bring it back to Starbucks and think about, there's the busy mom who's like, I need to get my drinks on my way to this next thing I have to do, and I don't want to have to stop, go in and order. Well, you solve a problem for that person. It's a really meaningful problem. That's a segment of customers. Your ads can say, not just I'm a 4.5-star app, but here are 18 reviews about how I save people time and you get their drink faster. Meanwhile, there's another segment of customers who go to Starbucks because it's consistent. Over and over and over again, it's the same thing. And you can get rewarded and get the drink that you love, right? That's a different segment of valuable activities around the app that you can advertise to, again, a set of personas. And we have lots of targeting capabilities through platforms like Google and Facebook that will allow you to actually take those messages from customers and deliver them right into the hands of the right prospective customers who say, man, that clicks for me. That's a problem I have. And so we like to see people really get sophisticated around the problems they're solving for customers and then marketing against it.
That's great. All right, here's another question from, I'm guessing, someone who might be on a product team. We keep getting product recommendations in our mobile app reviews. I see that pop up a lot. Is there an easy way to parse out these reviews and send them to our product team in a way that's not overwhelming? As a former product manager, I'm going to direct this one to you, Robi.
Yeah, so this is super common with any public forum for feedback. As soon as somebody realizes, oh, I can talk to the company about this, they're like, let me talk to them about everything that's on my mind. And so what we've seen is, using app monitoring, right? Like AppFollow can help the team say, all right, most of this is maybe support related, but there's a portion of this that is feature related. You can start to actually bucket, right? And I think some of the tools from AppFollow are really elegant in their ability to bucket and segment and say, hey, product team, take a look at this. We think that this is important. So that's the first step, is if you're not actually connected with the product team, let's connect them. Let's show them some of the outputs around this. But then actually giving them some of those proactive tools and putting in the hands of the product team the ability to go out and say, hey, customer, how is this going? Here's a feature that you're using. I hear people in comments talking about this. What do you actually think as you're using it? And that's where really Alchemer Mobile shines for product teams across the world, is allowing the product team to own some of the feedback loop, as opposed to being on the tail end, being told months after, hey, this is what people are saying, instead being upfront into the design and saying, we're going to solicit some feedback. So that's a transition, again, in that maturity model where we see product teams say, wow, all right, there's lots of valuable information here, and there's a channel that's valuable for me to really listen.
That's great. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that one, Jonny?
Yeah, I mean, all I would say, I think Robi's points are absolutely spot on, but I think, I touched on data and this overwhelming nature of things. And I think integrating with the systems that are common to that product team, that's key. Like make it familiar so it doesn't become overwhelming, I think is huge. And Robi's right in terms of you can do a lot of organization of your data within AppFollow. We're just launching custom semantic tags now, so you can really get super tailored about, especially if you've got a niche app, let's say, or you can tailor it to the language or the topics that your users talk about. And then the sky's the limit. You can just do really, really good, segmentation there and have these, kind of flowing through to the right place. So, yeah, you can clearly see themes and patterns and, know how best to react. So, yeah, I just did that.
That's great. All right, here's one, and I want to look up this app because this looks pretty cool. I have a family tree builder app with a 4.5-star rating. Congratulations. My question is, how should I improve organic ranking for my app on the Play Store as well as on the App Store? I'll let you take that one first, Jonny.
Yeah, I mean, improving your organic, rating. I think what you want to do is be having a look at, doing some testing around kind of keywords, excuse me, around, kind of title length, description, doing all of that really good stuff in terms of, really understanding what's working for you, doing a lot of kind of A/B testing too. Review management does come into this too. I think, you will rank higher organically if you have good, kind of reply hygiene. So depending on how many reviews that you're getting, like, do kind of consider that, in partnership with any App Store optimization activity. But yeah, I mean, you've got a good rating already. But I would just keep testing graphics, keep testing title length and kind of keyword research.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Robi?
Yeah, I would take a little bit of if you're at 4.5 stars, but you're in I'm pretty sure a very competitive category, right? That there's a lot of activity around that. There are a couple things that we've seen people think about and be really sophisticated around. So, time-based activities. So maybe you find that the holidays are a time where people come together, right? Families are together, and as a result, family trees have more, interest and activity. So you want to actually be showing up more actively around the holidays as people are open to discovering more apps. So we see a lot of download activity happening around Christmas as people get new devices. So focusing some of your marketing activities, potentially paid search spend going up in conjunction with those common areas of time for your category to be discovered will actually have lasting impacts, because if you're highly discovered and downloaded in that busy time, it will overweight the algorithms when they think about momentum for the slower times. The second is momentum does matter, right? So the number of ratings and reviews you have is important to maintain. So if you're seeing, like we've seen a lot of people implement maybe homegrown ratings prompt systems, and they tend to go really spiky, right? They'll go, wow, we got a lot of 5 stars reviews, and then we run out of the population that you can prompt to. And as a result, the ratings also go, not the ratings, the rankings in the store go spiky, but what you want is smooth and steady. And that's one of the tools that we offer, is ability to really manage that volume on a regular basis. So if you're not already doing that and thinking about how to get slow and steady, consistent volume, you've got to be thinking about that as a piece of your strategy. And then I think the third thing I would be focusing on is, in your category, the difference between 4.5 and 4.9 might really matter. We see in some really competitive categories that it matters. So while you're still at a great place at 4.5, if your category is highly competitive and many competitors are 4.8 or 4.9, you're going to want to move up. You're going to want to get closer to the level they are in order to change that ranking for yourself.
Great points. And I think you've given me an idea for an upcoming big family get-together at the holidays. All right, I think we've got time for one more question. I think this is a pretty interesting one, and someone who I like the fact that they like the idea of closing the loop with customers, but it seems like a lot to manage. Who is ultimately responsible for managing feedback in most enterprise companies? And this person says their marketing team is currently doing it. Why don't you chime in on that one first, Robi?
Yeah, so I don't have an easy answer for you here. This is, I think, when Jonny and I are talking and prepping for this, cultural philosophy, right?
And behavioral change is really the biggest obstacle for most companies to having great ongoing brand management, right? And so if the philosophy of your company is, this is a hot potato problem, I don't want to deal with it, you've got to address that problem. And we're not going to be able to do anything to address that cultural problem. What we can bring are tools that are going to allow you to maybe make more sense of the information, do it faster, automate things that should be automated, and give yourself more tools to listen. But if your company is scared of ownership of feedback, well, you got to figure that out. But what we tend to see is that ownership of feedback starts oftentimes with marketing or product marketing, because they're saying, hey, the App Store is where we shine. We need to make sure that its reputation looks good. And then they quickly move into, how do we bring product into this? Because clearly long-term changes will require product investment in order to meet customer demands. And when we see companies move from like a marketing and product marketing function to product also gets benefits out of the capabilities that we bring to them, the ability to listen and understand what people are doing with the features and how it's landing. When we see both teams kind of seeing the problem the same way and saying, wow, I get benefit out of listening to the customers and being proactive, then we see things start to take hold, right? The philosophy shift is not one that's just spoken on a slide. It's actually teams are eager for this information. And so I don't think there's an easy answer to changing philosophy, but I do think there's a process, which is, again, you want these multiple teams to have the tools and the capabilities to make sense of it so they can do their jobs better.
That's great. Do you have anything you wanted to add to that, Jonny?
No, I think that's a great answer. What I would say is it has to be top down. Ownership's one thing, right? Kind of customer marketing, let's say, could own it, like the actual act of remembering to close the loop and making sure that any feedback changes that have, related to, so any feedback that's related to product changes is kind of communicated back out. That's fine. That's a process. But I think when it comes to teams working together and being kind of motivated in the same way and kind of caring about feedback at the same level and closing the loop, that matters. It has to come top down. You can't have a really sort of passionate head of support who's like, hey, feedback's really important, because you will always get that push-pull scenario. But if your CEO or founder, or if feedback and closing the loop and the voice of the customer, we should say, has a seat at the table, at the executive or the board table, it has a much higher chance of actually being implemented and and a process being put around it. So yeah, and it's hard if you've been around for a while and you're starting to think about this stuff and implement it. Change is hard, but if you're young enough, then make this part of your cultural being. That you're kind of user centric. Yeah, that would be that.
Great point. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. I think things like this, you absolutely need an executive champion that can make such a huge difference. And then making things, and it's like I always think about, when you do something, when you force yourself to do something, and then it becomes habit, and then it just becomes part of who you are. That's what you really need to do as you think through that cultural aspect. All right, we are out of time. So thank you both to Jonny and to Robi today. Your insight and this discussion has been so interesting. If you want any additional information about AppFollow or Alchemer, please visit appfollow.io or alchemer.com/mobile. And again, thank you to everyone for joining us today, and especially thank you to Robi and to Jonny. Everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.